Hi, in this tutorial we're going to have a look at how you build a nice cube out of 6 business cards. It should remain relatively strong, and we're using no glue or no tape, so it's simply folded card. We're particularly going to look at the best way that you could instruct your learners to construct such a cube. The idea of the cube is as well that its design enables us to put them together like Lego bricks, and also to use paper to simply colour them in, and this will enable us to construct some nice little components and models. So the first thing anyone's going to need to do is to be able to prepare their card. I would advise holding two perpendicular to each other, so we end up with this nice cross shape. And if we simply fold one piece over the other, when we take them apart, we end up with a nice square faces and the tabs that is going to help us with the construction. Now when you fold them over, it's not the end of the world if you don't get a perfect right angle. All you would find is that your tab is slightly lopsided, but unless it's really out, it should still come together okay in the construction. Now, word of warning, this is the biggest mistake that some people will do. If somebody tries to take a shortcut by folding many pieces of card at once, it might look like it would work nicely, but you have two problems. The first problem is the fact that you have these rounded edges, so it won't fold very well. The other problem that you can perhaps spot is they're actually going to be different sizes. The outer ones are going to be much wider than the inner ones. And if you then come to constructing your cube, it will essentially just fall apart. So try to discourage anyone folding multiple pieces of card at once. Now if we repeat the folding process a couple of times, we should have 6 pieces of card to form the 6 faces of our cube. And I always advise starting with what I'm going to call the base, facing yourself and away from yourself, and then our two sides are going to come underneath the base. Now depending on your folding, sometimes it will stay upright, sometimes you might have to keep a finger on it. The rule of constructing these boxes is that the tabs are always going to be on the outside, so as you look at a face, you're going to always have the tabs on the outside. Now what that does mean is if we put on the front and the back, when we do that, it's going to have to go on top of the base but around the outside. Now this can be quite tricky because at the moment our box isn't very stable. So again, you can either put a finger on the base and we try put our piece on top of the base but around the outside. The other way I like to hold it is just pinching the bottom, and that allows me to do exactly the same thing. So it's going on top of the base and around the outside, on top of the base and around the outside. Again, at this stage, if your folding is neat, it might hold itself together, but if not, we just again continue holding at the bottom. Seems to provide the most stable way to do this. Putting the lid on requires it to go the correct way under the 2 tabs that will end up sitting on the roof. The mistake people make at this point is they forget that it has to go with the tabs on top, or they try put it on this way. So we try lift up these two and put the roof underneath. What happens when we close it up is we get quite a nice strong cube. Linking it to other boxes can be quite awkward and takes a bit of getting used to. The tabs are useful because we're going to try and put the tab of one cube into the tabs of another, and that creates this kind of hinge. Now that part's relatively straightforward, but then getting the other side into the tabs can be awkward. So there's a couple of different knacks. You can perhaps try just kind of wiggle it so that it goes in. That's in at one corner but not at the other. One method I've found is if I just take a second to lift up the lid of one of them and kind of push it inside the other, and you get a stable lock. Now it does take a good bit of practice, that, and occasionally a cube will fall apart in your hands. That's just the way of it. I usually find within one group of learners there's usually somebody who can put them together quite well. Worst case scenario, you can always resort to just gluing the cubes together. Now what is quite nice for our components is to be able to colour them in, and again we don't need any glue or tape. We can take coloured paper and fold it in exactly the same way that we folded the card. Again, don't worry if it doesn't look too neat, because when we put it on, all you will see are the square faces. I'm going to put the paper on in a similar fashion to how I connected the boxes. If I put the paper under one side of the tabs, I can fold it over and put it under the other side, and it sticks on nice. Now again, the paper in the card can sometimes be quite stubborn, but do have confidence in your box. It should be quite stable, so if you need to be quite rough with it, you often can be. Sometimes at this bit here, just getting the other side, and you have to give it a real good and poke it under the tabs. And there we go. So do any connections before putting paper on, so white to white, and then you can go around your final shape and put the coloured paper on.